For decades, we've all had one number drilled into our heads, our LDL cholesterol. But what if that number, the one we've been told to watch so carefully, isn't actually telling us the whole story about our risk for heart disease? Well, today, we're going to dig into a different way of looking at all this, one that a whole lot of experts now believe is way, way more accurate.
So, let's kick things off with a bit of a medical mystery, one that really shines a light on a major flaw in how we usually think about heart health.
Just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about people having a massive heart attack, yet their main risk marker, the number most doctors are looking at, looks totally fine. How is that even possible?
Yeah, this isn't just some weird one-off thing. It's a pattern that's been documented over and over. It tells us that, look, measuring the amount of cholesterol in your blood is a piece of the puzzle, but it's clearly missing something absolutely crucial for a huge number of people.
Okay, so if the amount of cholesterol isn't the whole story, then what is? Well, the answer comes from changing our focus. From thinking about the cargo to thinking about the vehicles that are carrying that cargo through our bloodstream.
Let's use an analogy here. It makes it so much clearer. Imagine your arteries are like highways. This little guy you see here, this is a low-density lipoprotein or LDL particle. Think of it as a tiny delivery truck, and its job is to carry cholesterol, that's the cargo, to all the cells in your body.
This standard test, the one you always get, is called LDL-C. And what it does is measure the total amount of cholesterol cargo being carried by all of those trucks combined. It's basically a measurement of weight. But there's a different test called apolipoprotein B, or just ApoB for short. And it does something much, much smarter. You see, every single one of these potentially artery-clogging particles has exactly one ApoB protein on its surface. It's like a license plate. So measuring ApoB is like doing a direct head count of every single delivery truck on your highway. And here's the absolute key point. Heart disease isn't really caused by the cholesterol cargo itself. It's caused by the delivery trucks, the particles, getting stuck in the wall of your artery. So the more trucks you have on the road, the more chances there are for one to crash into the wall and start building up plaque. It doesn't matter if each truck is carrying a lighter load. More trucks means more traffic, and more traffic means more accidents. ApoB gives us that true traffic count. So what happens when the cargo measurement and the truck count tell two completely different stories? Well, this situation has a name. It's called discordance, and it's exactly where the standard test can be dangerously misleading. This is discordance, and you know what? It's not some rare thing. It can happen in up to 1 out of every 5 people. Their cholesterol amount looks perfectly fine, but what they really have is a ton of small, dense particles. That means their total traffic of potentially dangerous particles is sky high, but the standard LDL-C test misses it completely. This chart right here from the National Lipid Association makes it all crystal clear. Just look at the top row. That's when the ApoB particle count is high. It doesn't matter if the cholesterol cargo is low or high, the risk of plaque buildup is elevated across the board. Now look at the bottom row. When the particle count is low, the risk stays low. The takeaway is just undeniable. The real danger follows the number of particles, not the amount of cholesterol they're carrying. And hey, this isn't just a theory. We have some really powerful long-term proof. There was a landmark study called Cardia that started tracking thousands of healthy young adults way back in the mid-1980s just to see how their risk developed over a lifetime. So 25 years later, the results were in, and they were stark. The young adults who had a high particle count, a high ApoB, were way more likely to have calcified arteries, which is a direct sign of heart disease by the time they hit middle age. And this was true even if their LDL cholesterol was normal. Once again, the long-term risk followed the truck count. Okay, so if ApoB is the number that really tells us our risk, the next logical question is, what on earth can we do about it? Well, the good news is you actually have a ton of control over the traffic in your arteries. The way to lower your ApoB isn't about some magic pill or one specific food. It really just comes down to 3 fundamental levers that we can all pull in our daily lives: what we eat, how we move, and how we sleep. For nutrition, we're talking about patterns. Swapping out saturated fats for unsaturated ones is a great start. Upping your soluble fiber literally helps pull these particles out of your system. But maybe the biggest lever of all is just improving your overall metabolic health.
When you do that, it calms down your liver so it doesn't feel the need to keep pumping out so many of these ApoB trucks onto your arterial highways in the first place.
Exercise is just a powerhouse for remodeling your body's traffic system. Think of things like running or cycling as upgrading your highway cleanup crews. It helps your body clear fats from the blood so much more efficiently. And resistance training? It builds muscle, which acts like a giant metabolic sponge, just soaking up fuel so your liver doesn't have to package it into all those ApoB particles. The goal is to create a system that just naturally stores less, burns more, and clears these particles out faster.
And finally, let's talk about something people often overlook: regulation. Your liver, the factory that builds all these ApoB particles, it runs on a really strict 24-hour clock. When you're in chronic sleep debt or your internal clock is all messed up from something like shift work, it's like the factory manager starts to panic and just sends out way too many delivery trucks at all the wrong times. Getting consistent, quality sleep helps reset that factory clock, making sure all the traffic is orderly and efficient.
So now that you're armed with all this knowledge, the final piece is putting it into practice. How do you actually bring this up at your next checkup? I mean, it's the obvious question, right? If this test is so much better, why isn't every doctor ordering it? The answer, as it turns out, has a lot more to do with institutional inertia and old habits than it does with science. A lot of insurance policies, including big ones like Medicare, base their coverage on guidelines that are frankly ancient, more than a decade old, from before all this overwhelming evidence for ApoB came out. And even though cardiology groups are now recommending it, getting millions of doctors and entire healthcare systems to change the way they've always done things, well, that takes a very, very long time. Dr. Alan Snyderman, who's one of the top researchers in this field, just puts it perfectly. Even if you have to pay out of pocket, the test itself is often really inexpensive, like $20. When you think about the value of getting a truly accurate picture of your personal risk for heart disease, that cost is just trivial. The standard cholesterol test, it gave us a starting point. It gave us a rough sketch of our risk. But the science has moved on. We now have a high-resolution camera available to us. So the real question is, are you ready to see the full picture?